How's it going, folks? It's time for another RWBY review and analysis with yours truly. Firstly, spoiler warning as per usual, and I can't think of something witty for a screenshot to go along with this, so here. Last week it was back to business for the RWBY gang, with the students prepping for continuing their White Fang investigations under the cloak of their first hands-on experience as huntresses, under the watchful eye of Oobleck. So, as we see what lies ahead outside of Vale for this odd pairing, was it an enjoyable experience, or did leaving Beacon mean bringing the quality down? Let's kick it off. We open with the aftermath of the reveal that Professor Oobleck, Dr. Oobleck, is Team RWBY's huntsman for their mission, with the four girls still not looking forward to the caffeine-fueled teacher's ramblings. Before we ship off though, they get a quick chat with Team Juniper and the resident sea monkey pair, Neptune and Sun. Here we find out that with Juniper, not only is Nora upset with Ren for not making pancakes, it seems, they'll be working outside of Vale as well, with a sheriff of a town, with Sun and Neptune working with the local forces of Vale to give them time to get familiar with the kingdom. It was a nice short scene, I guess, though it's really just there to set up where those we're familiar with are going for their missions. That will be interesting though, if we'll see them appear again in this volume should the Grimm hit the fan. Up in the air and on their way to their destination, after RWBY can't seem to grasp what a tussle is, Oobleck explains why he's the one that Osman assigned the RWBY girls to, in that typical Oobleck way. While he's not exactly the best physical option for a search and destroy assignment, he's the perfect man given the location. A new place that was shown called Mountain Glen, a planned expansion of Vale that sadly became a massive failure, as it was overrun with Grimm and in the end had to be cut off from Vale, left to ruin and abandonment, and now it could be a strong spot for Grimm and possibly Cinder's faction. But before they can get to work, Oobleck catches that RWBY brought her bag after he mentioned not to, and after some back and forth, Zwei, the pet corgi that RWBY stashed away, pops out. Though it seems that Oobleck seems positive at least about it, since it would seem that Zwei, being a dog, has the right senses to aid the mission, so RWBY gets off scot-free once again. Time though for the mission at hand, as Grimm start to make their presence known, giving Oobleck a chance to enlighten the girls, and us, on a part of their nature. You see, Grimm rarely travel alone, and if they do, it will only be a matter of time before they arrive back at a pack. They're also very attracted to negative emotions, no doubt explaining why they're in such a tragic scenery. Be it sadness, loneliness, jealousy, or flat-out hatred, they'll pick up on it just like a sense of smell. So think of them as sort of the Heartless from the Kingdom Hearts series, or Dementors from Harry Potter, whichever you prefer. But enough talk, it's time to fight, as we get a rather simple yet very well edited fight sequence. The animations themselves aren't as extravagant as, say, the mech fight or the players in pieces fight, but the cut-ins, as well as the quick manner of some of the blows, does help the fighting not get dull. Not to mention we get some more wonderful background music to accompany it. While the girls do their best on the mission and to showcase to Oobleck their skills and why they shouldn't be sent back to Beacon, this leads into Yang expressing her displeasure that Oobleck hasn't once shown off his own skills to them, or even aid them and show them how a pro does the job. To which he himself explains not all of their work has to be action, for he's also scanning the area, and besides, they all signed up for the job, so they shouldn't have any complaints. This is where the episode starts to take a bit of an interesting atmosphere switch, since we're now out of the more humorous and action-filled parts. Oobleck begins to interview the girls why they wanted to be a huntress. Yang is first, and says that she's a thrill-seeker. She wants to explore the world and by doing so, live out some adventures with the added bonus that it might help people. Weiss gets the question next, to which her reply is more towards her name. As a Schnee, once she knew that she was capable of fighting, it was her duty to do so, and live up to that name. With Blake rounding out the interview section, saying that she wants to help rid the world of such things as senseless violence, corruption, and of course, discrimination. So we got the experience side of things, the duty side of things, and the justice mindset, which fuels these three respectfully, though it's clear that this is a mindset with some issues, that ties into them not fully knowing what drives them to want to be a huntress. Yang might not seem to take the job seriously enough, where she might be forced into some tough decisions and the risk of harm to others or herself. With Weiss, it's a sense that she has to do this rather than her wanting to, especially because of that name of hers and the pressure that it comes with. Blake's probably the most obvious one of the three, since we saw a bit of it with her stressed in the past, that she may want justice, but she doesn't know the steps to get it, rather just taking it as it comes and just depending on her skills as a fighter and the knowledge and experience of someone who was a part of the White Fang. These three responses in the end don't really feel like the ones that the girls fully support or chose. Yang's could easily be massively influenced by how she saw Summer Rose, the quote, super mom, since she never had that sort of feeling from the actual birth mum of hers. Weiss is very much something that feels more what her father would have wanted her to say, and Blake's is very much the mindset of those who want peace, and isn't necessarily a Blake Belladonna answer. Interesting away from this though, is that RWBY was never asked the question. I assume it's either because it's obvious as it ties into her wanting to be a huntress to aid those in need, the same thing she mentioned in Volume 1, or the fact that she's younger than her teammates, or it's some other reason that we'll get to in the next episode. Instead, we have the Doc and RWBY, along with Zwei, go on the perimeter scout, where we get to see some new breed of Grimm. Goliaths, which are gigantic elephant-based Grimm, bigger than trees. Beasts that Oobleck explains are rather interesting. Unlike many other Grimm, these massive behemoths aren't just strong, but they seem to be smarter than the average Grimm. They're aware that their chances are slim if they attack the humans, so with self-preservation in mind, making them possibly hundreds of years old because of this, they keep mostly harmless, without giving a reason, until the day when humans are weak enough where an attack could mean their own victory. For now though, they wait outside of the kingdoms. This of course is rather foreboding and adds some interesting layers to the Grimm, something I honestly didn't expect to be saying. Not all of them are mindless and fueled by the negative emotions that they sense, but there are also those out there which can be smart enough to plan and to think and be more aware of the situation. Which makes me wonder just how many other Grimm out there that are like that, or even smarter and more capable. This has also added some threat to these creatures that I think is beneficial, and makes them more deadly than just plain old beasts. Especially if given at the right time and with the right numbers, they could prove to be a massive wrecking force that could do some serious trouble. Before we head back to the group's base though, we move from insight on the Grimm to insight on Oobleck, as RWBY flips the switch and asks him why he wanted to be a huntsman. His response ends up rather mature for a guy whose voice actor also did frickin' Caboose. He's capable with weapons and, if need be, can fight rather well, at least in his own words. But he sees his true strength being his mind. He's aware of the misfortunes of the world, and uses how it affected him personally and his strengths and weaknesses to aid the world the best way possible. He sees the tragedy of Mountain Glen and many other mistakes of the world as a way to learn and grow and become better off, much rather seeing himself as a teacher rather than a fighter, and wants to use his knowledge and the lessons that he's learned and discovered to teach the next generation to not make those same mistakes and avoid such outcomes as what happened to Mountain Glen. A far better use of his skills than being a frontline fighter, with Oobleck ending the chat with him saying that this job is all he would ever want to be. Not the kind of side of Oobleck I expected to see. I'm sure like many others out there, we saw Oobleck's reveal last episode and his past appearances as signs that this guy is just 100% hyper and more goofy than anything. And yet here he is showing signs that he's very intelligent and insightful. Yes, I do hope we see him fight in some way down the line, but this side of him I kind of like, and it brings a nice edge to a man who is admittedly still a tad loopy. Back at home base, we see that Oobleck's words are still having some effect on the rest of Team RWBY. Whereas we've seen that Oobleck knows very well his reason for being a huntsman, the girls aren't on the same boat, and questions their answers that they gave earlier with some very interesting development that no doubt will come full circle down the line. But it'll be interesting to see what it is beyond Yang's love of the thrill, Weiss's duty to the name and cause, and Blake's passion for justice, just to see what is that definitive drive. As for now, we end the episode with them prepping for sleep, and Ruby on first watch, looking for a better result on tomorrow's hunt. To which means that it's time for my positives and negatives of the episode. Remember folks, these are just my own feelings, it doesn't mean the episode is bad, and of course your opinions will differ. Negatives wise, as per usual for Volume 2's form, it seems that there's not much I really could say. I will say though that I was distracted by some technical issues that did caught my eye. On the note of eyes, one of Sun's eyes had some flicker in them in the earlier chat. Later on, Weiss is shown at one point to have 2 Mightonasters, and when Oobleck passed Yang his bag, just a bit afterwards, he's seen with it still on. I expect most of these will be worked on come the DVD releases, so it's a bit nitpicky at best. For positives though, there is much more to talk about. For one, this was a surprising episode with its tone that I rather enjoyed. It could have easily been a full-on action and stakeout episode, but instead we got some good insightful thoughts of some of its cast, especially with Yang, Weiss, and Blake, which helps them make them a bit more relatable and realistic, since no one instantly has all the answers in this world, be they fictional or real, nor do we often instantly believe in what we say, especially when it comes to do with what you want to do in your life. There was also the added lore of this world outside of Vale with Mountain Glen, the added tidbit that makes the Grimm more than just mindless beasts and more like living creatures, and of course, the speedy green that is Oobleck's surprising depth and makes what many have seen as a one-note support character as someone with a lot more humanity and intrigue to him. Not to mention this was an episode with a top quality background soundtrack. Listen to the music as the RWBY girls first fight, and notice the differing styles and tones as they switch from the point of focus of each girl, or just the atmospheric piece when they fly in, or when Oobleck has his moment. It's truly some standout work here, and my hat's off to Jeff Williams and co. And speaking of standout, for the voice acting props of this week, it has to go to Mr. Joel Heyman. Cause not only can the guy do quick-fire speech like it's second nature to him, but he did an excellent job of keeping Oobleck's energetic nature alongside some rather meaningful and personal chatter. So surprising episode, yet a rather entertaining one. What we got was more than I expected with some character and world building. Come next week, I should expect the pace to pick up with whatever they may find out there, but for now I give this episode 2 solid thumbs up. But what about you? Did you find the character-focused episode pleasing to you, or were you more looking forward to action? How do you feel about Dr. Oobleck? And also, what kind of Grimm would you like to see down the line? Comments down below as always, and until next time, pending I'm not stuck playing Smash Brothers, I'll see you for the next episode and review.